Hello and welcome to another episode of a Trip of a Lifetime podcast with me, Celeste.
And me, Jasmine.
Now today we're talking about the Christmas Invasion, the first episode of season 2 of Doctor Who. It aired on the 25th of December 2005. It was directed by James Hawes and written by Rusty Davies. Your general thoughts, Jasmine?
I really liked this episode. And I really liked how it started with the fact that David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, was very confused and he actually forgot that he regenerated in front of Jackie and Mickey. And he was like, oh, I've forgotten something important. And then he just went, Merry Christmas! And it was just irrelevant whatsoever. And then they were completely confused, like, who's this strange man?
I guess I nenever thought of it that way, in the sense that I guess the first time I watched it, I didn't know what was going on, really. And I think I'd already watched some of Tennant's episodes prior to that, so him Eccleston regenerating into Tennant wasn't really a big deal. And so when I was first watching it and he says Merry Christmas, I didn't think anything of it. So since then, because I already know he's going to say that, I've never thought of the fact that people would have thought that he was going to say, oh yeah, I've changed my face, or oh yeah, I've regenerated. No, it's just a thought that never occurred to me. And it's interesting how, since they arrived back on Christmas Eve, clearly the Doctor and Rose have gone from whenever they were in Parting of the Ways. I'm not sure what time of the year they came back or Rose came back briefly, because they don't mention it. I mean, you would probably assume that it was because it came out in June, and it might be June, so that Rose has kind of gone from June straight to December kind of thing. But you could also say that maybe it was December and it was about a week before, because depending on how long she's gone from the two places is how long Jackie and Mickey have been wondering whether or not she's alive or not, is my point. Also, when you hear the TARDIS noise right at the start of the episode, I don't know if you noticed, but it's slightly distorted from usual, because it's showing that something's not quite right with the TARDIS, and then you see it appearing and literally slamming into buildings and stuff. It's a detail I've never noticed before.
Also, when Rose arrives and she's talking to Jackie, she's like, oh, so what's up in your life, to Jackie, or what's going on? And then Jackie starts telling her, but then she just loses interest completely and just goes straight to Harriet Jones.
Yeah, because of course Rose has been away, so she wouldn't know about the election that happened, because Harriet Jones is now Prime Minister, which of course the Doctor actually said in the episode would happen. It's interesting how at the end of Aliens in London, World War III, the end of World War III, he mentions that she's elected for 3 terms straight and leads the world into the great, like a golden age of Britain. But that doesn't happen. So I'm assuming maybe time got rewritten a bit, because at the end of the episode, sure we're skipping ahead a bit here, but the Doctor, because she makes that decision on behalf of Earth, which we'll get to again later, the Doctor then spreads a rumour, which I think was actually quite misogynistic in hindsight. Not so much that maybe he intended it to be misogynistic, or that Russell intended it to be misogynistic. I guess it's almost kind of the Doctor commentary. It's kind of a commentary on how people of the present day kind of view women in power, kind of thing, more than the Doctor actually believed it, because he's using it to specifically manipulate, if that makes sense. Anyway, I can't remember what point I was trying to make it. That time got rewritten because they mention a vote of no confidence, which is very relevant in the politics of today, at the moment, with what the hell is going on with the Conservative Party. Like, literally, they're currently battling between 2 people at the moment to who's going to become the new Prime Minister. But, it keeps changing. Anyway, she's clearly voted out, and once you have a vote of no confidence, it's very unlikely you're going to get voted in again,
I was going to mention some of the more comedic elements. So you've got the killer Christmas tree, right? Which we didn't know is a killer Christmas tree.
Oh, the iconic, I'm going to get killed by a Christmas tree line. Every time there's, a Doctor Who, but it's a meme, like compilation on YouTube, that clip is always in there without a doubt. It's just how high Camille Kadori's voice goes in that bit.
But it's also the fact it's juxtaposed by the really bright and bubbly Christmas music going on at the same time.
Yeah, but because it's so fast, it's sped up, that it's kind of it gives it even more creepy vibe to it, because you know something's going to go wrong. You've got the first reference to the Doctor having two hearts. Or at least I think it's the first reference in the show. It might not be, but it's the first, like, big reference of it. They make a big deal of it.
You also have Jackie again interrupting the Doctor multiple times by going, I need, like where he's saying, I need, and then she's just saying some random things that come into her head. And it's just comedic because it just keeps going and going and going.
That's what I love about Russell's writing. A lot of people get rubbed up the wrong way by Russell's writing because he does that a lot. He tries to put comedy into it and it works, I think. I still find that funny, even to this day. And I just wonder how many takes it took for them to do that, because the amount of lines that both David and Camille had to remember for that to work. And then of course you've got the bit with the dressing gown a bit later, because he's like rambling on about the pilot fish and how there's something bigger coming, and then he just interrupts himself because he found an apple on the dressing gown that he's wearing. I just love small bits like that, because Chibnall hasn't put that in his writing as much, if that makes sense. It just feels a bit like exposition with no kind of breaks in, whereas sure, that bit of dialogue with the Doctor talking about the pilot fish was expositional, but it was broken up and it was told in a way that didn't feel expositional, you know?
And then you've got the iconic tea fixes everything sort of inside joke.
I mean, you even get that line where, like, well, I wrote it down, hold on. That Jackie's like, a nice cup of tea, and then Rose sarcastically says, the solution to everything. And it does end up being the solution, which is why it's a very clever bit of foreshadowing that Russell slipped in there. Because most people wouldn't have batted an eye at that line the first time they watched it. And then suddenly a few minutes later, they're like, oh! Then there's that yet another use of news footage in this episode. That Russell used the in-universe news broadcasts. I've been previously calling them fake news broadcasts, but then that feels a bit weird considering the whole fake news thing. So I think in-universe news broadcast gets my point across better. Because I love it when Russell does that. And it's something that, again, I mean, there's actually a bit of it, to be fair, in Praxeus, which is in one of the newer Chibnall episodes. But other than that, I can't remember the last time they used a news broadcast since the wedding of River Song.
I also like some of the lines that Harriet Jones says. Like, for example, you've got, tell the president that he isn't my boss and he isn't turning this into a war.
Yeah, and then there's also the line where she says to Llewellyn, who's kind of a bit all over the place because he's just found out that aliens are real, and she's like, oh yeah, there's like a government mandate stopping my autobiography from being published and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, some of the lines, like earlier on when Jackie says to Mickey to make sure he checks how much of the phone line he's using and the internet he's using, because it was very much a pay-as-you-go thing back then, which is kind of a bit outdated, but those lines, they are still funny. They still work. Oh, and then once again, I think we mentioned this in our last full episode, when we were talking about Bad Wolf Punk the Ways, that when Mickey and Rose are in town looking around, and once again is Mickey going on about how, oh, he's so much better than the Doctor because he's not going to change his face, he's not going to fall asleep randomly, like, he's reliable, and Rose is literally telling him to shut up. Like, she literally does. Yeah, I guess it's one of the reasons why I always forget, going back to the previous episode, how annoying Mickey used to be, because I'm used to him towards the end of season 2 and in season 4, where he's grown a lot as a character.
I also like, speaking of the fact that you got Mickey thinking he's better than himself, better than the Doctor, sorry. I also like the fact Rose has like a speech moment that's kind of sort of similar to the Doctor, where she mentions all these different planets and species.
I actually wrote them down, hold on. You've got the Shadow Proclamation. This isn't in order. The Slitheen, Jagrafest, Daleks, and the Gelth. Only one of which is an actual organisation that deals with law enforcement, and that's the Shadow Proclamation. But obviously she's just throwing in a random article. She doesn't know what Article 15 does. I thought VFX, the teleporting, looked amazing for the time. And also the stuff with, the Sycorax, when the lead Sycorax leader did the kind of that hand motion and it kind of glowed up. Because the actual screen itself was distorted and was supposed to be distorted, I thought that looked fine. Because it's supposed to look grainy, And I also thought the halos things that went, that went over the A positive people, I thought that was good. I thought all the VFX in this episode was good. And the practical prosthetics were really cool as well.
I agree with you. Which isn't much for me to say in any way, but you've already said most of it.
Yeah.
And I actually think this is one of my favourite episodes from a VFX point of view.
Yeah. I guess the only thing that hasn't aged as well is the hand growing back. The Doctor's hand growing back. And even that isn't awful. Obviously there's that unit commander or whatever I'm not sure what his rank was, that was next to Harriet the majority of the time. The black guy that was there with Llewellyn and Sally for a while. Yeah. I liked the idea of blood control and the fact that the Doctor picked up on it immediately or pretty quickly. Because I really like the fact that he actually dipped his finger in the blood and tasted it. In the sense that, a lot of the episodes, I know I constantly compare Chibnall's era to this one, which I probably shouldn't do, but in the sense that, when Chibnall has, or whoever's writing the episode has Jodie try and figure out something, she uses a sonic screwdriver all the time. And, it's fine occasionally, Matt Smith does it a bit as well. It's not as bad, but it does happen a lot. Whereas, in this case, literally he doesn't use a sonic screwdriver, mainly because he doesn't have it on him, but, he just dips it in, figures it out just by tasting it. And I wish we had more of that, because it's more interesting than just scanning it with a sonic screwdriver. The sonic screwdriver should be used for opening doors, and or occasionally short-circuiting something.
Building filing cabinets.
And building filing cabinets. Not that that's ever happened in New Who, but you never know. And of course we've got Torchwood gets dropped occasionally. Now I remember mentioning this back when we were reviewing Aliens in London World War 3. But I said in that I realised that Harriet says in this that she knows who Torchwood is, even though the United Nations don't know them and most people don't know about Torchwood. And I think it's because she read it in that red file, because it was specifically for an alien invasion. So I think she read it in there, and that's why she knows about Torchwood. I think the main thing that people like talking about with this episode is at the end, when Harriet blows up the ship. Do you agree with what she did? Because it's a hard one, ethically.
No, if they were going to go away and not fight Earth again, or, harm anyone. But also, yes, because they might have done that again and just kind of done I don't know what it's called, where they're basically lying, but they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I think the way of their species, because they seem to be, much like the Sontarans, primarily a warrior species. So most likely, if they're anything like the Romans or the Spartans, they're going to be very much, they believe in oaths and things. So I kind of have the belief that they wouldn't have come back. But I understand where Harriet's coming from. Because you've got that point where, the Doctor's not always around. And it's true. I mean, we don't see it often. We don't often see the effects of that in New Who very often. But if you've ever watched Torchwood, especially Children of Earth, there are I haven't watched the full Children of Earth, but I do know what happens. There are horrific times where the Doctor isn't there, So what happens? You know, I mean, you even see it in Turn Left. The Doctor's not there. Sometimes you do have to make the hard decisions and do stuff that isn't necessarily morally correct. And, I mean, you could also argue that the Doctor's been a bit of a hypocrite here, in a sense, because it's not as if he hasn't threatened to blow up an entire species. Although I suppose in this case, they were going to just leave the planet alone. I also really like the wardrobe scene at the end. Not just because it's nice to see him pick out his iconic outfit, but also that the wardrobe set is clearly just the TARDIS console, but they've taken out the console section and just CGI'd a staircase in the middle. And it's quite funny that they try to hide it. It just doesn't work. But
what I was going to say is, at the very end, we have this parallel to, I think it was episode 1 or episode 2, where Rose takes the Ninth Doctor to dinner, or asks him, do you want to come have dinner with my family? Because Jackie's invited him. And he's like, no, I don't do family dinners. But at the end of this one, he does a family dinner.
well, I think at this point, partially because the Doctor's in love with Rose, but and also because he knows Jackie and Mickey so well at this point, that he has no reason to say no anymore. Because the whole reason I mentioned this, whatever episode it was, I can't remember. I think it might have been Aliens in London World War 3, actually. I don't know, it was a while ago. That the reason why the Doctor didn't want to go in is because he didn't want to get close to people. But now he's already close to them, so why not, you know? And you see it again in Army of Ghosts. He kind of stays around and stuff. Right, and then you've got the comment that I mentioned earlier of the Doctor telling Harriet that he can take down her whole position in 6 words. Doesn't she look tired? Or something like that. Or don't you think she looks tired? And I do think it's misogynistic, that phrase, because that wouldn't be used against a man. But I do think the reason why Russell put that, you could argue that maybe you didn't realise how misogynistic it was, but also I kind of think that the Doctor knew how misogynistic and how awful that would affect her, but he did it anyway, because he knew what the people would like, and he felt like that was a good punishment almost for what she did.
But then this links to the sort of person he decides to become, or he knows he becomes after he regenerates, which is no second chances. I'm that sort of a man.
Yeah. Okay, what would you rate this episode?
This one is probably the highest one I've ever rated. Are you ready?
Oh, God.
9 out of 10.
Seriously? A 9? But it's not... I mean, it's not an awful episode. Maybe it's just because I've watched it so many times. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Not awful, but not great. Just because, like, plot's fine. There's a little bit of character development. I mean, I think Rose has, like, 3 different crises throughout the episode. Again, like, it's great.
Oh.
What?
I forgot to mention that cringe line I didn't like in this one.
Oh, what was it?
Help me.
Hey?
When she whispers it to him when the Christmas tree is trying to attack them.
I didn't hate that, honestly. Okay, fair enough. What else was she supposed to say, though?
I don't know. It's just, I think it's also the way she said it. I don't know.
I guess, well, she kind of needs to whisper in his ear because he's, you know, I don't know. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think maybe it's because I've watched it so many times. It's a great introduction to the Doctor. I just don't think it was groundbreaking. It didn't emotionally move me. It wasn't a spectacular plot, so I can't really put it any higher than a 6.5, in my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't my favourite Doctor introduction.
So why did you give it a 9?
I don't know, maybe I might redact that statement and say 8.5.
Yeah, I'd still argue it was a bit high, but in my opinion, I don't know. I mean, it's not as if there's even a ton of action in it. I mean, sure, there's the Christmas tree and there's the Santa, the pilot fish.
I do have a more favourite introduction to the Doctors.
Let me guess. It is the 11th Hour.
Yes.
To be fair, that's most people's favourite introduction to a Doctor. So, I don't think it's just your bias there. In this case, yeah, I don't understand your ratings, but I'm not. It's a different opinion. I'm not supposed to.
I like being confusing.
Yeah, I think that's all we've got time for today. So join us next time when we review New Earth, episode 2 of season 2 of Doctor Who.